This is Dirk Strangely. Thank you for joining me on this painting of the Watchers. Here you can see I laid out all three owls. Basically I just want the direction and the flow of the painting, the composition. The rest I have kind of painted in my head, so I just drop in the color. I did start this painting off with some burnt sienna. Sometimes I use coffee just to stain the paper with so it's not white. Rarely like to use white or black because I just think they're dead tones. And I'm just putting the owls in here. There's going to be three main owls. Everywhere you see those slants there, those vertical slants, are going to be owls. I wanted to do it like an off-kilter composition. It makes it more interesting instead of just something looking straight at you. Because things aren't like that in nature. Things aren't so uniform. So if I made them uniform, like just all three branches just right next to each other, staring in the same direction, it would look unnatural. Unnatural in a way that we're not comfortable in seeing. It's okay for paintings to be unnatural. Just good composition is important. So I block in the three owls. Like I said, I'm just literally painting images that I see in my head. The big circle in the background there that you see at the top, that's obviously going to be the moon and the light source. So the darker will be dark away from it and get lighter closer to the circle, or the moon that it gets. I started kind of just dropping in some basic colors around the moon with my ink brush. It's a Chinese Sumi ink brush, kind of for detail on. But I used it just to drop in some simple basic colors. And then once I got that down, I pull out another brush. Love drawing those bird feet. And this brush here, supposedly the end of it's a rooster feather, like a rooster tail feather. It's pretty cool. Painting owls with a feather. But that rooster feather serves to give like an inconsistent like brush strokes, which is pretty cool, and it fills in big area. You see that little cloud I just put at the top where the moon is? I eventually turned that into a branch. I was going to do clouds, but I decided to do just branches in the background, so it looks like you're looking through a forest and just capturing a special angle in the forest, kind of giving the moon some value there. Now just rendering out the owls a little more. My color palette is made up mostly of, for this piece of art, was made up of burnt sienna, dark umber, or burnt umber, cadmium orange, phthalo blue, and Perusian blue. And obviously a little bit of cadmium yellow and white as well. But rarely do I just go solid black or white in any of my paintings. Like I said before, I just think it's dead tone. The only time I can imagine using white or mostly white, I don't think I'd ever use black, but the only time I can imagine using white is if it was a reflection off of metal, or maybe a really bright reflection off of water. Here I'm kind of just adding layers upon layers upon layers of texture. So I'm using a little sponge. I'm adding textures with my brush. I'm filling in areas that need underpaintings. All this so far essentially is an underpainting still. The complete painting is an underpainting until you get to the top layer of detail where you're adding the reflections in the light source. At least with the technique that I paint. Just trying to get those branches to be very dark over the moon. Just working on the eyes there. One thing about branches I like to do is, there's a Tom Waits song where he says, he just says something like, the branches look like scary fingers reaching. And I imagine basically what you're seeing here, just the branches are like fingers reaching toward the sky. And then these creatures are perched upon the arms of the trees. That looks kind of creepy without the highlights in there. Looks like Coraline a little bit. But once we drop the color in there, in the shape of the eye, not so scary. I like that little owl. That middle owl is probably my favorite one. Now I got a toothbrush and I'm adding more texture. I'm flicking burnt sienna and phthalo blue on there. I let each one dry first though, just to prevent it from getting too wet. And also it's a good way of darkening the corners. Kind of like an airbrush almost, an airbrush effect, because it just mists it on there after the big droplets have already made contact. This point of the painting, what I'm doing is I'm going around and I'm still adding layers, but I do little fixes here and there too. Things that I don't like or things that are bothering me about it, I clean up and fix. The whole painting is just, it's a pretty in-depth thought process. Making those branches look warmer in front of that moon, you know, and the indication that it's fall or maybe the later stages of spring. Just make them nice and warm. We're not using any cold colors in this painting. Well, we are, but we warm them up. Warm colors are mostly like oranges, reds, yellows. But there are cold colors. See how I'm dropping in that highlight there to show the reflection of the sun. It's pretty cool. You can watch it dry in fast time. That's how we really make those color spots in the feet pop. Adding in some more feather reflection. We just want to make him look fuzzy. And the shiny parts need to be shiny. Very feathery. Look at those highlights on the branch. Over there, I was adding texture of the highlight. I didn't really like the way it looked, so I just dulled the color by just touching it with my finger and removing some of the excess paint, so it's still there. Now I went back with cadmium yellow and I'm adding that in the highlight spots just so it just really glows there. As Bob Ross would say, we just want to make it sparkle. Now just dropping in some of this shadow. Notice I went with the Prussian blue, because that blue contrasting with those really hot cadmium yellows and oranges just really look good. More highlight on the side. Look at that sun hitting those feathers. No, not the sun, the moon. Look at that moon hitting those feathers. I'm just adding texture into the branch so it doesn't look like a pole, it looks like a piece of wood. Dropping in the shadow between those bird toes. That's right, I said bird toes. Now I'm dropping in hard shadows just to lift anything that's coming away from the owl, which would be its feet and its beak. I'm warming up this branch over here by the moon, because the moon obviously would make those branches really hot. Now here's the cool part, check this out. Start dropping in all the background stuff, all the background branches, the trees far away. All these scary fingers reaching. That's a continuance of the big branch. Probably make the main stalk of the tree. Thought it'd be cool to show part of that. And coming up is a pretty cool technique that I tried for the first time in this painting. I used a very porous sponge to drop in the leafy shapes. But first I just add so many of these branches in the background. I just want it to look like a heavily wooded area, because that's where this shot would be taken. That's where you'd see these three owls like that. Just in a heavily wooded forest. Different colors of trees and foliage. I love the way those branches cut across the moon at the top. Okay, so here I'm dropping in some colors. Basically I used a dark green, maybe a hunter's green, yellow ochre, and phthalo green. The sponge seemed to work pretty good for giving it that far away leafy look. I went in there and added some highlights. And I went back to the toothbrush and added some spritz of, actually did the highlights on the trees with the toothbrush, just flicked the light on top of the trees. I blocked in the underpaintings with the sponge, and then I used the toothbrush to spritz on those highlights to really make them sparkle. Now I'm just pulling these owls out, adding the last bits of detail to them. Make sure the composition looks good. Make sure the contrast of the colors looks good. And then I pull off the tape. That's my favorite part, because you get to see it complete. Sign this bad boy, and it's done.
Bye everyone, I hope you enjoyed my dad's painting.